The rain on the window of the penthouse was 1,000 silver tracks against the black glass. Frederick Vance watched it, a crystal tumbler of amber whiskey untouched in his hand. The city below, a sprawling grid of human ambition, pulsed with indifferent light. Here, atop the Vance Tower, he was king of a concrete jungle. CEO, billionaire, a silhouette of power in a tailored suit. But beneath the bespoke wool and the crisp linen, beneath the calm, commanding rhythm of his human heart, the other heartbeat, the one that was pure, primal storm. His wolf, a restless shadow in his soul, paced. It hated the city's smog-choked air, the metallic taste of exhaust, the deafening psychic static of 1,000,000 human minds. It longed for the deep, resinous silence of the redwood reach forests, for the cool earth under paws, for the chorus of the pack. But duty, a chain as strong as titanium, kept him here. The Vance Empire funded the pack, protected their lands, built their future. He was alpha. Even here. Especially here. "The car is ready, Mr. Vance," his beta, Johnson, said from the doorway. Johnson was built like a cliffside, his loyalty a tangible force. Here, he posed as head of security. His eyes, the pale green of forest moss, missed nothing. Frederick set the glass down. The dinner with the Singapore investors, at L'Etoile, 8 o'clock, a necessary evil. Frederick shrugged on his overcoat, the movement a study in controlled grace. As they descended in the silent elevator, the pressure in his chest tightened. The wolf snarled at the confinement. He needed air that wasn't recycled. He needed space. L'Etoile was all muted gold light, velvet drapes, and the low hum of discreet wealth. The maître de baude, a symphony of obsequiousness. Frederick moved through the room, a predator in a savanna of linen tablecloths and crystal. He acknowledged nods with a fractional tilt of his head. His dinner companions were already seated, 3 men with sharp eyes and sharper calculators. The conversation was a river of numbers, projections, mergers. Frederick navigated it flawlessly, his mind a supercomputer, but a part of him was detached, floating above the chatter. Then, the door to the kitchen swung open, and the world tilted. It was a scent. Cutting through the layered perfumes of truffle oil, aged wine, and expensive cologne. It was simple, devastating. Wild iris, after a spring rain. Warm honey. And beneath it, a thread of something purely, utterly hers. A sunlight-drenched meadow. Home. His wolf slammed against his ribs, a howl tearing through his silent psyche. Mate. His entire body went still, every sense laser-focused. His gaze, golden and intense, swept the room, and found the source. She was carrying a tray of empty dessert plates, moving with an efficient, graceful balance between the crowded tables. Her uniform, a simple black dress and white apron, did nothing to diminish her. Chestnut hair was tied back in a practical but escaping ponytail, highlighting the elegant line of her neck. Her eyes, downcast as she focused on her task, were a mystery. Her face was a sweet, open composition of gentle curves, and a mouth that looked like it knew how to smile genuinely. She was human. Utterly, completely human, and she was his. "Frederick?" one of the investors asked, noticing his fixation. Frederick dragged his eyes back, the effort physical. He felt the low growl building in his throat, and forced it into a neutral cough. Apologies. A momentary distraction. His voice was sandpaper. He couldn't focus. The numbers were gibberish. The deal was dust. All that existed was the rhythm of her movement, the sway of her hips, the delicate flutter of her pulse at her throat that he could hear from across the room. His wolf was in a frenzy, demanding he get up, cross the space, claim, touch, mark. Johnson, seated at a nearby table, stiffened. He caught Frederick's eye, a question in his gaze. Frederick gave a minute, almost imperceptible shake of his head. Stand down. He endured another 20 minutes of agony. He made polite excuses, his tone leaving no room for argument, and stood. The investors were bewildered but compliant in the face of his sudden, icy authority. He didn't head for the door. He moved toward the back of the restaurant, toward the service corridor. He intercepted her as she emerged from the kitchen, her arms full of clean linen. She looked up, and her eyes hazel, flecked with gold and green like a forest floor, widened. He saw the recognition in them, not of him as a man, but of the sheer, overwhelming force of his presence. She took an involuntary step back, her grip tightening on the linens. She started, her voice soft, a little breathless. Your name, he said. The command was out before he could soften it, his alpha nature overriding human decorum. A flicker of defiance crossed her face. Is that how you usually ask for it? A spark, kindling in dry tinder. His wolf approved. He inclined his head, a gesture of concession that felt foreign. My apologies, that was discourteous. My name is Frederick Vance. And you are? She hesitated, those remarkable eyes searching his. He let her look, let her see the intensity he couldn't hide. Rachel, she said finally. Rachel Miller. Rachel. Her name was a prayer on his lips. Do you get off soon? Her eyebrows shot up. That's none of your business, Mr. Vance. It is, he said, the truth a blunt weapon. It became my business the moment I walked in here. Wait for me, please. He didn't wait for her answer. He couldn't. If he stood there another second, he would do something irrevocable, like brush his thumb across her cheek or bury his face in the curve of her neck. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the dim corridor, the scent of iris and storm clinging to the air around her. Outside, in the back alley where the car idled, Frederick braced a hand against the cold brick wall, head bowed. The rain misted his hair. His breathing was ragged. Johnson was at his side in an instant. Alpha? What is it? Frederick looked up, and in the dim security light, his eyes flashed a brilliant, unmistakable gold. She's here, Johnson. My fated mate. In there. Johnson's jaw went slack. The waitress? The human? Yes. The word was a vow. Clear my schedule. Cancel everything for the next week. No. The next month. Frederick, the pack council, the border disputes with the Silvermane pack. Can wait, Frederick growled, the sound vibrating with finality. He pushed off the wall, straightening to his full, imposing height. The businessman was gone. Only the alpha remained, a hunter who had found his life's only quarry. Nothing is more important than this. Nothing. He got into the car, but he didn't tell the driver to go home. He told him to drive around the block. And again, and again. He rolled down the window, letting the cold, wet air mix with the fading, haunting trace of her scent that still clung to his clothes. Inside L'Etoile, Rachel finished her shift on autopilot, her mind reeling. The intensity in that man's eyes. It had been frightening. Thrilling. It had felt like being seen, truly seen, for the first time. She shrugged on her worn coat, collected her tips, mostly small change, and pushed open the back door into the alley. The sleek, black car was there, idling like a panther. The rear window slid down. Frederick's profile was etched against the interior light. Get in, he said, his voice softer now, but no less compelling. Let me take you home. It's raining. Rachel hugged her bag to her chest. Every sensible bone in her body screamed to say no, to run, to call a cab. But her heart, traitorous and curious, hammered a different rhythm. The memory of his gaze held her. It promised everything. Just a ride, she said, her voice barely a whisper against the patter of the rain. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Just a ride. She slid into the warmth of the car, the leather sighing beneath her. The door closed with a soft, final thud. The scent of him cedar, clean spice, and that wild, electric storm filled the space, overwhelming and intoxicating. As the car pulled away from the curb, gliding into the river of taillights, Frederick knew there was no going back. The carefully constructed wall between his two worlds had just been obliterated by a waitress with hazel eyes and the scent of wildflowers. His human life was over. The hunt, the claiming, the inevitable storm had begun. And he would let it consume him. And her. Utterly. He didn't ask for her address. He already knew. He'd had Johnson find out everything in the 40 minutes he'd been circling the block. The car moved steadily toward a modest apartment building in a neighborhood far from the glitter of L'Etoile. The silence between them was thick, charged, alive with unasked questions, and a pull so potent, it was a physical ache. Rachel stared out the window, watching her familiar world blur past, feeling as if she were being driven not to her home, but to the edge of a cliff. And part of her, a part she never knew existed, wanted to leap. The car was a capsule of charged silence. Rachel sat as far from Frederick as the spacious back seat allowed, her body a tight line of tension against the butter-soft leather. Her hands, chapped from dishwasher detergent and hot water, were clenched in her lap. She stared out at the neon-washed streets, the familiar diners and convenience stores of her neighborhood looking alien through the tinted window of a vehicle worth more than her lifetime's earnings. His scent was everywhere. It wasn't just cologne. It was something deeper, wilder, like the air after lightning cracks open the sky, like the heart of a forest where no paths go. It coiled around her, unsettling and irresistibly attractive. She could feel his gaze on her profile, a physical weight. "You're not afraid of me," he stated, his voice a low vibration in the quiet. It wasn't a question. Rachel turned her head, meeting those impossible eyes. In the shifting shadows of the car, they seemed to hold their own light. "I should be," she admitted, her voice steadier than she felt. "Everything about this is insane. Men like you don't ask for waitresses' names. They don't wait in alleys. They don't look at people the way you looked at me. How did I look at you?" He leaned forward slightly, the movement predatory in its grace. "Like you were starving," she whispered, "and I was the only thing you could ever eat again." A sharp, approving breath escaped him, an accurate assessment. The car slid to a smooth halt outside her building, a modest brick structure with a flickering porch light. Johnson was out first, opening Rachel's door with a polite, inscrutable mask. She murmured thanks, stepping out into the damp night. Frederick followed, dismissing Johnson and the car with a glance. It glided away, leaving them alone on the empty sidewalk. The rain had softened to a mist. It caught in Rachel's hair like diamonds. Frederick fought the urge to brush it away, to feel the texture of her skin. His wolf was a crescendo in his blood, howling closer claim. "This is me," she said, gesturing weakly to the door. "I know." "Of course he did," she swallowed. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Vance." "Frederick." The correction was gentle but absolute. "And it wasn't just a ride, Rachel. It was a beginning." He took a step closer, and the space between them crackled. She didn't retreat, a point for her courage. "I would like to see you tomorrow." She let out a shaky laugh. "Tomorrow? I work a double shift tomorrow." "Not anymore." Her chin lifted. "I need that job. The tips are good for this area. I will compensate you for a year of tips if you have dinner with me." He said it not as a boast, but as a simple, undeniable fact. Money was a tool, and he would use every tool at his disposal. Anger, bright and hot, flashed in her hazel eyes. It was a better reaction than fear. "I don't want your money. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not a prize to be bought. You are a treasure to be earned," he countered, his own intensity flaring. "And I am not playing. I have never been more serious in my life. One dinner. Give me one dinner to explain." "Explain what? That you're a billionaire with a sudden, inexplicable crush on a waitress? I've seen the tabloids. I know how this ends." "You know nothing," he said, and the raw truth in it made her flinch. He saw it, and softened his tone, a Herculean effort. "Rachel, please. I feel drawn to you. In a way I cannot logic away. It is a compulsion, an undeniable pull. Have you ever felt that? As if the universe itself has shifted its axis." The fight left her shoulders. She had. The moment their eyes had met in the corridor, she'd felt a dizzying lurch, a sense of fate clicking into place. It was that feeling, more than his looks or his wealth, that had made her get into the car. "One dinner," she whispered. Victory, sweet and fierce, sang through his veins. "Tomorrow, 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up." "No," she shook her head. "I'll meet you. Somewhere public. Very, very public." A smile, genuine and startling in its warmth, touched his mouth. "Wise. Le Jardin. Do you know it?" She'd walked past it. A fairy tale restaurant with a glowing glass conservatory, always wondering what it was like inside. She nodded. "I will reserve a table. Wear something that makes you feel like you." He reached out, then arrested the movement, his hand curling into a fist at his side. The restraint was palpable. "Good night, Rachel Miller." He turned and walked into the mist, disappearing into the night without a backward glance. Rachel stood on the sidewalk for a long time, her skin buzzing, until the cold seeped through her coat and drove her inside. The next 24 hours were an eternity. Frederick canceled 3 international calls, much to his board's consternation. He stood for an hour in his walk-in closet, dismissing suits in favor of dark, elegant, casual wear clothes that spoke of power, but not of the boardroom. He was a warrior preparing for the most important battle of his life, and the weapon was his own truth. Johnson watched, a silent, concerned shadow. The pack is getting restless, Alpha. Rumors are spreading. They feel your distraction across the bond. Frederick straightened his sleeve. Let them feel it. They feel my certainty too. Our Luna has been found. She is human. The traditions, the bloodline purity, the elders obsess over. A low growl rumbled in Frederick's chest, and the expensive crystal decanters on the dresser shivered. My mate is my mate. The traditions will bend. The elders will bend, or they will break. Make that understood. At precisely 5 minutes to 7, a taxi pulled up outside Le Jardin. Rachel stepped out, and Frederick's breath caught. She wore a simple, emerald green dress that mirrored the flecks in her eyes. It was modest, not designer, but it flowed around her. She looked beautiful and utterly real. He met her at the entrance, foregoing the waiting maitre d'. You came, he said, drinking her in. I said I would. She looked around the breathtaking interior, the thousands of tiny lights like captured stars, the lush hanging gardens. This is a lot. It's just a place, he said, guiding her to a secluded table nestled among fragrant orange trees. The company is everything. The dinner was a delicate dance. He asked about her life, her childhood in a small town, her move to the city to study art, the death of her parents that had forced her to put her dreams on hold and take any job she could find. She spoke with a quiet resilience that resonated with the steel in his own soul. She was a survivor. He, in turn, spoke of his family business, the weight of legacy, the isolation of leadership. He told her of a private, close-knit community, living on extensive wooded lands upstate, with its own strict codes and loyalties. He spoke in metaphors, but the truths beneath were clear. It sounds like a cult, she said halfway through an exquisite chocolate dessert, a teasing glint in her eye. He laughed. A rich, unexpected sound that turned heads. It does, doesn't it? But it's just family. A very intense, very demanding family. We're protective of our own. Their conversation flowed, easy and deep. The electricity between them never faded, but it transformed into something warmer, a magnetic pull that felt increasingly natural. He found himself telling her things he'd never voiced, his fear of failing those who depended on him, his longing for something more than dutiful solitude. You seem like you carry the world on your shoulders, she said softly, her hand resting near his on the table. He looked at her fingers, so close to his own. The urge to intertwine them was a physical ache. I thought I had to carry it alone. The walk back to her apartment was quiet. The city sounds muffled. He didn't call the car. When they reached her building, she turned to him. The streetlight caught the gold in her hair. I had a really nice time, Frederick. It was the beginning of my life, he said, his voice rough. He could hold back no longer. He lifted a hand, and finally, gently, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. His fingertips grazed her skin, and a shockwave of connection, profound and terrifying, arced between them. Rachel gasped, her eyes wide. She felt it too, a jolt of recognition that went to the marrow of her bones. What was that? She breathed. That, he whispered, his forehead nearly touching hers, is the truth. The thing I need to explain. But not here, not like this. He was trembling. The alpha, the billionaire, was trembling before a human waitress. Can you get away, for a weekend? Come to my family's estate, see the other half of my world. Then, I will tell you everything. It was madness. Going away with a man she'd just met, no matter how intense the connection. But the touch had sealed it. Something fundamental had clicked into place inside her. She was already his. She just didn't know the terms yet. Okay, she heard herself say. When? Tomorrow. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Johnson. Again. The pack world was intruding, demanding attention. He ignored it. I'll pick you up at noon. He didn't try to kiss her. The claiming bite was a distant, primal future. This first surrender, her voluntary step into his world, was sweeter. He waited until she was safely inside, then turned. His phone buzzed once more. This time, he answered. Johnson's voice was tense. Frederick, it's Kelvin. He's at the perimeter of Redwood Reach. He's challenging your absence. He says if you're too distracted by human distractions to lead, then perhaps you're not fit to be alpha. A cold, deadly calm settled over Frederick. Kelvin, his most ambitious rival, a wolf of pure cunning and spite, was making his move. The timing was not a coincidence. The pack bonds were gossiping wires. "Tell Kelvin," Frederick said, his voice dropping to an icy, predatory register that had nothing to do with the human street around him, "that my mate is my priority, and that if he sets one paw on my territory, or speaks one more word against what is mine, I will tear his throat out and hang his pelt from the boundary oak. Make sure he understands the message comes verbatim from his alpha." He ended the call. The human facade was gone. Here, in the shadows of the city, stood the pure alpha, defending his claim. The first battle for Rachel had just begun, and it wasn't in the human world. It was in the dark, ancient woods of Redwood Reach, where the law was tooth and claw, and a human woman with the scent of iris was about to become the ultimate prize. The car that picked Rachel up was not the sleek town car from before. It was a rugged, dark SUV, windows tinted to near opacity. Johnson drove, his silence more pronounced than ever. Frederick sat in the back with her, his usual intense focus softened by something that looked like apprehension. The further they drove from the city, the more the concrete sprawl bled into rolling hills and dense, ancient forests. "Your family's estate is very remote," Rachel observed, her hands folded tightly. "It needs to be," Frederick replied, watching the towering redwoods begin to crowd the road. "For privacy. For peace." He didn't add for running, for hunting, for howling at the moon. After 2 hours, they turned onto a private road, passing a heavy iron gate that swung open silently. The forest here was primordial, the air cool and rich with the scent of pine, damp earth, and something else, a wild, musky aroma that made the hair on Rachel's arms stand up. Then, the trees parted. The estate was not a mansion, it was a compound. Lodges of massive timber and stone nestled into the landscape as if they had grown there. There were gardens, but they were wild and bursting with herbs and hardy flowers. And there were people, dozens of them. They stopped their activities chopping wood, tending plants, repairing a fence to watch the SUV pass. Their gazes were direct, assessing. Rachel saw a strength in them, a coiled grace that mirrored Frederick's. "Who are all these people?" she whispered. "My family," Frederick said. "The Vance pack." "Pack?" Before he could answer, the SUV stopped before the largest lodge. A woman with fierce eyes and silver-streaked black hair stood on the porch, arms crossed. She radiated authority. Next to her was a younger man, lean and sharp-faced, with a smirk that didn't reach his cold eyes. Fredersen helped Rachel out. The moment her feet touched the earth, a strange sensation washed over her, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to come from the ground itself. She felt watched by the very forest. "Mother," Frederick said, his voice formal as he approached the porch, "I present Rachel Miller." The woman's gaze swept over Rachel, not unkindly, but with the scrutiny of a general inspecting a new recruit. "So you're the one," she said, her voice like gravel and honey. "I am Lillian, alpha mother of this pack. This," she gestured to the smirking man, "is Kelvin, a member of our council." Kelvin's eyes glittered. "A human. How novel." The word was a poison dart. Frederick's growl was low, a sound that shouldn't come from a human throat. The air suddenly felt thicker, charged. "You will address your Luna with respect, Kelvin." Rachel's heart stuttered. "Luna?" Kelvin held up his hands in mock surrender, though his eyes promised conflict. "Of course, Alpha. My apologies." "Rachel." He said her name like a dare, before turning and melting into the shadows of the lodge. Lillian's expression softened a fraction. "Come inside, child. You've had a long journey." The interior was a shock of warmth and wildness. Polished wood, stone fireplaces, pelts on the floors, and the scent of pine smoke and herbs. It was both luxurious and utterly primal. Lillian led them to a sitting area. "Frederick has told me of his conviction," she said, handing Rachel a mug of steaming tea. "But conviction is one thing. Reality is another. Our world is not safe for humans. Our ways are not gentle. The bond, he claims, is sacred, but it will make you a target. Do you understand?" Rachel looked from Lillian's serious face to Frederick's, which was set in lines of unwavering determination. "I understand that I feel a pull to him I can't explain," Rachel said, finding her voice. "I understand that this place feels more like coming home than any place I've ever been, but I don't understand anything else. What is a pack? Why did he call me Luna? What is really going on here?" Fredersen knelt before her, taking her hands in his. His were warm, slightly rough, and they engulfed hers. What you feel is a fated mate's bond. It is rare, absolute, and for werewolves, it is the foundation of everything. He took a breath, his golden eyes holding hers captive. Rachel, I am not just a man. My family are not just people. We are werewolves, lichens. This land, Redwood Reach, is our territory. I am their alpha. And you. He brought her fingers to his lips. You are my fated mate. My other half. My Luna. The words hung in the air. Werewolves, lichens, alpha, Luna. They were nonsense syllables from fantasy novels, yet spoken with such raw truth. In this place of profound wildness, they bypassed logic and struck her core. A memory flashed the electric jolt at his touch, the superhuman grace of the people outside, the wild scent, Frederick's animal growl. She pulled her hands back, standing up, her chair scraping. This is a joke. Or I'm dreaming. Or you're all insane. Show her, Lillian said quietly to her son. It is the only way. Frederson stood. Pain flickered in his eyes. I wanted to give you time, but my world won't allow it. He began to unbutton his shirt. What are you doing? Rachel stepped back, alarm spiking. He didn't stop. He shed the shirt, revealing a torso of sculpted muscle, scarred in places with silvery lines that looked like claw marks. Then he focused. The air around him shimmered, like heat rising from asphalt. His bones crackled, a sickening, potent sound. Fur, dark as midnight, sprouted along his arms, his face elongated, his canines lengthening into fangs. He fell forward onto hands that were now massive, black-clawed paws. Where Frederick had stood, now crouched a wolf of impossible size. It was powerfully built, with a thick pelt and intelligent, glowing golden eyes. His eyes. The wolf Frederick chuffed softly, lowering his great head. Rachel's knees gave way. She sank back into the chair, a silent scream trapped in her throat. The world narrowed to the beast before her, to the truth that shattered everything she knew. Lillian's hand was on her shoulder, steadying. Breathe, child. He is still Frederick. The man is in there. The wolf is not a monster. It is his soul, his strength, his other form. Trembling, Rachel stared into the wolf's eyes, and beneath the primal fury, beneath the animal intelligence, she saw him. She saw the man who had looked at her with such starving devotion. The fear began to recede, washed away by a tidal wave of awe and a dawning, terrifying acceptance. Slowly, she reached out a shaking hand. The wolf nudged his massive head against her palm. The fur was insanely soft, warm. A connection, deeper than any touch before, flooded her. It was recognition. It was completion. A single tear traced down her cheek. It's you, she whispered. The transformation reversed, the bones shifting, the fur receding. In moments, Frederick knelt before her again. Human, vulnerable, watching her, with desperate hope. All of it, she said, her voice cracking. The feeling. It was all true. He nodded, his own eyes bright. All of it. And more. Suddenly, a furious howl ripped through the tranquil afternoon, a sound of challenge and rage that came from the woods. It was answered by another, and another. Johnson burst through the door, his face grim. Frederick, it's Kelvin. He's taken a group of dissidents to the Challenge Rock. He's howling for a contest of strength. He claims your focus on a human proves you're weak. He's demanding you relinquish the alpha title, or fight. The vulnerability in Frederick's face vanished, replaced by a cold, ruthless mask of authority. He rose, pulling Rachel to her feet beside him. The moment of tender revelation was over, swallowed by the brutal laws of his world. Stay with my mother, he commanded, his voice the crack of fate. Do not leave this lodge. What are you going to do? Rachel asked, fear for him a sharp sting. He looked at her, and the wolf was right there in his eyes. What I must. I am going to prove to my pack, once and for all, who their alpha is, and I am going to make sure every wolf here understands that you, he cupped her face, his touch branding her, are under my protection. Any challenge to me is a challenge for you. He turned and strode out the door, already stripping off his shirt as he went, ready to meet the challenge not as a billionaire, but as the alpha wolf of Redwood Reach. The first howl that tore from his throat as he shifted mid-stride was not just a call to battle, it was a declaration of war for the woman he loved. And Rachel, her human heart pounding against her ribs, knew her life would never be the same. She was in the heart of the Reach now, and its laws were written in tooth and claw. The air outside the lodge thrummed with a palpable, predatory energy. Rachel stood frozen in the doorway, Lillian's firm hand on her arm. Through the trees, she could see a crowd gathered around a massive, flat-topped boulder, the Challenge Rock. On it stood Kelvin, shirtless, his body coiled with lean, dangerous muscle. His followers, a mix of young, restless wolves and a few older, discontented ones, formed a grim semicircle. Frederick emerged from the tree line, naked from the waist up, moving with a lethal calm. The pack parted for him, a sea of wary faces. The respect was there, but it was tinged with doubt, with curiosity about the human who had caused this rupture. "You disrupt the peace of the Reach, Kelvin," Frederick's voice carried, cool and authoritative. "Over what? Your own ambition? Over the strength of the pack," Kelvin shot back, his voice a snarl. "You bring a human into our sanctum, call her Luna, and expect us to bow. You scent of her, not of the hunt. You're distracted, soft. The Silvermane pack scouts have been at our northern border. And where is our alpha? Courting a mortal waitress." A ripple of unease went through the crowd. The Silvermane threat was real, a pressure they all felt. Frederick didn't flinch. "My mate makes me stronger, not weaker. She is the heart I fight to protect. A true alpha does not lead through fear and purity, but through strength that includes loyalty to his fated bond." He stepped onto the rock, the space between him and Kelvin shrinking to a few feet. "You question my strength? Then challenge me, not with words, with blood." The law was ancient and simple. A direct challenge for Alpha could only be settled in one way, a fight to submission. In wolf form, Kelvin's eyes glinted with vicious triumph. He wanted this. "To submission," he agreed, his voice guttural. Both men stepped back. The shift this time was not a controlled reveal but a violent explosion of power. Bones snapped and re-knitted with audible crunches. Fur erupted, and snarls filled the air. Where two men stood, now two massive wolves faced each other. Frederick was a storm of black fur and powerful muscle, larger, his aura one of commanding might. Kelvin was a tawny, agile brute, all cunning speed and sharp angles. Lillian pulled Rachel back into the lodge, but not before Rachel saw the fight begin. It was a blur of fur, fang, and thunderous growls that shook the very ground. She heard the sickening sound of teeth snapping, a yelp of pain. She clapped her hands over her mouth, her stomach heaving. "He will win," Lillian said, but her knuckles were white on the windowsill. "He could be killed," Rachel cried. "He is fighting for you," Lillian said, turning fierce eyes on her. "Every wolf out there knows it. If he loses, Kelvin will exile him. And you would be driven out, or worse. This is the world you have stepped into, girl. Love here is not just kisses and promises. It is survival." The brutal sounds from outside seemed to go on forever. Rachel sank to the floor, tears of terror and helplessness streaming down her face. She loved him. The realization was a clear, bright star in the chaos. She loved the man. And somehow, she loved the wolf. The thought of him being hurt, of losing him because of her, then, a deafening, triumphant howl shook the windows. It was Frederick's voice, in wolf form, ringing with victory and absolute authority. It was answered by a chorus of howls from the pack this time, voices united in acceptance and awe. Minutes later, the door opened. Frederick walked in, human again. Blood streaked his chest from deep claw marks, and one eye was swollen shut. He was battered, but he stood tall, the power radiating from him undeniable. Behind him, Johnson and two other wolves half-dragged, half-carried a limping, human Kelvin. His body a map of brutal injury. Frederick's gaze found Rachel on the floor. He crossed the room in 2 strides, ignoring everyone else, and knelt before her. "It's done," he said, his voice hoarse. She reached up, touching his bruised face. "You're hurt." "He lives only because I showed mercy. The pack saw my strength. They saw what I fight for." He leaned into her touch, closing his eyes. "They will accept you now." But the victory was not without cost. That night, As a healer stitched Frederick's wounds in their private cabin, he'd insisted the reality set in. The bed was covered in furs. The night sounds were the cries of owls and the whisper of the mighty forest. Rachel helped clean his wounds, her hands trembling. This is your life. Violence. Challenge. It is part of it, he admitted, wincing as the antiseptic bit. But it is not all of it. There is family, loyalty, a connection to the earth you've never felt. There is a bond between mates that is deeper than anything humanly possible. He caught her hand. I need to show you. Let me in, Rachel. Not just into my world, but into the bond. It's forming, but it's faint, because you're human. I can strengthen it. How? With blood. And vow. He took a small, ceremonial silver dagger from the bedside table. My blood, and your consent. It will not make you a wolf, but it will tie your life force to mine. You will feel my emotions, my location when I'm near. You will be truly, irrevocably my Luna in the eyes of the pack and the moon. It was another colossal leap into the unknown. She looked at his earnest, battered face, at the love and unwavering certainty there. She thought of the terror of the afternoon, the sheer relief at his victory. She didn't just want to be with him, she needed to be part of him, to understand this wild, beautiful, dangerous heart of his. She nodded. Yes. With reverent hands, he drew the blade across his own palm. Then, he took her hand, and made a tiny, shallow cut on her fingertip. He pressed their wounds together, his blood warm against hers. By blood and bond, by moon and marrow, I tie my life to yours, Rachel Miller. My strength is your shield. My breath is your own. You are my heart, outside my body, my fated, my Luna. As he spoke the words, a warmth spread from their joined hands, up her arm, and flooded her chest. It wasn't painful, it was like coming home. Suddenly, she could feel a second heartbeat alongside her own, steady, strong, his. A faint, golden thread of sensation, of him, his weariness, his profound relief, his all-consuming love for her glowed in the periphery of her mind. She gasped, I feel you. Tears shone in his golden eyes. He brought their clasped hands to his lips. And I, you. Now and forever. That night, curled against him in the furs, listening to his heartbeat and feeling its echo in her soul, Rachel knew there was no going back. She was bonded to an alpha werewolf. The human waitress was gone. In her place was the Luna of Redwood Reach. But as she drifted to sleep, entwined with her wolf, a new sensation flickered across the nascent bond. A spike of alertness from Frederick, a watchful tension. Somewhere in the dark woods, a threat still lingered. Kelvin's defiance had been crushed, but his bitterness remained. And the Silvermane wolves were still at the border, waiting. The peace, like the bond, was new and fragile, and the forest was full of hungry eyes. Weeks bled into months, and the rhythm of pack life became Rachel's own. She learned the cycles of the moon not as a celestial clock, but as a tide that pulled at the energy around her. She learned to identify herbs with Lillian, not for cooking, but for healing the injuries that were a common part of wolf life. She sat in on pack meetings, a silent observer at first, then gradually offering insights from her human perspective that surprised even the sternest elders' suggestions on trade, on security systems that blended technology with tradition. The bond with Frederick deepened into a constant, comforting hum. She could sense when he was irritated by a border report, when he was pleased with a successful hunt, when his desire for her burned bright. In turn, he was exquisitely attuned to her moods, appearing with a cup of tea when she was thoughtful, or sweeping her into a dance in the middle of their cabin when he felt her joy. But a shadow lingered. The human world still existed. Her friends, her few belongings, her entire identity, as Rachel Miller, independent woman, were still out there. And Frederick, despite having claimed her in the way of his people, longed to claim her in the way of hers. He wanted the human ceremony, the public vow, the ring on her finger. He wanted every part of her, in every world. He also knew the pack watched. While the blood bond had solidified her status, some still saw a human wedding as a frivolous distraction. He needed to unite both his worlds, to show his pack that his human mate was his equal in all realms, and to show Rachel that he cherished every facet of who she was. He planned it for a full moon, when his power and senses were at their peak, and the pack's energy was celebratory. He told her they were going to the city for a night, a date. To remind her of his human side, they dined at Le Jardin again, but this time at the best table. Rachel wore a gown Frederick had bought her, a deep blue that made her skin glow. She was more confident now, the Luna's grace settling into her bones. After dessert, he took her not back to the Packlands, but to the observation deck of the Vance Tower, his corporate kingdom. The city sprawled below them, a galaxy of human ambition. The wind whipped her hair. Frederick stood behind her, his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her head. "It's beautiful," she said, leaning back into him. "But it doesn't feel like home anymore." "Home is the reach." "Home is with you." He turned her in his arms, his face serious in the neon glow. "This world made me the man who could build an empire to protect my pack." That man fell in love with a woman who served coffee and had dreams in her eyes. He took a deep breath, going down on one knee on the cold concrete. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth. From his pocket, he drew not one box, but two. He opened the first, a diamond ring, exquisite but elegant, caught the city lights and fractured them into 1,000 rainbows. "Rachel Miller," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? In the human world, with vows and licenses and all the mundane, beautiful things that make your world spin?" Tears spilled over her lashes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Frederick." He smiled, a brilliant, relieved thing. Then he opened the second box. Nestled on black velvet was a pendant, a howling wolf carved from moonstone, suspended on a platinum chain. The craftsmanship was ancient, unmistakably Pack. "And will you?" he asked, his eyes glowing with that otherworldly light. "Wear this as a token of your place as my Luna? Not just my wife in the city, but my queen in the woods?" It was the final, perfect bridge between her two lives. She nodded. He slid the ring onto her finger. Its weight foreign and wonderful. Then he fastened the pendant around her neck. The moonstone felt warm against her skin, as if holding a piece of the moon itself. He stood and kissed her, a kiss of possession, promise, and profound love. The city hummed below, a witness to a union that defied its logic. The celebration was twofold: a small, lavish engagement party at the penthouse for his human associates, who saw a dazzling love story, and a massive, roaring bonfire feast at Redwood Reach for the Pack. At the Reach, Rachel wore her pendant over a simple leather dress. Frederick stood before the fire, her hand in his, and addressed his people. "You have seen my strength. You have felt the truth of the bond," he roared, and the Pack howled in agreement. "Now, we will honor the human tradition of my mate. We will go to their city, and I will make her my wife before their laws. And when we return..." He pulled Rachel close, his voice dropping to a passionate vow that carried to every ear. "Under the next full moon, I will complete the bond in our way. I will mark her as my Luna for all eternity." The Pack erupted in a cacophony of howls and cheers. It was a masterstroke. He had validated her human side, celebrated their traditions, and promised the ultimate wolf ceremony, uniting everyone in anticipation. Later, wrapped in furs by their own hearth, Rachel traced the moonstone pendant. A wedding, a marking. "It's so much." Frederick nuzzled her neck, his breath hot. "It is everything. The wedding is for the woman I fell in love with. The marking," his teeth grazed her skin, making her shiver, "is for the soul that was always meant to be mine. Are you ready for it all?" She turned in his arms, meeting his fierce gaze. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." But as the Pack reveled outside, one pair of eyes watched the happy couple's cabin with no joy. From the shadows of the healing lodge, Kelvin, his body still mending but his spirit twisted with venom, watched the celebration. His exile had been stayed due to his injuries, but his hatred festered. The human wedding was an insult. The marking would be the ultimate desecration. As the flames of the bonfire danced, so too did a darker plan begin to take shape in his wounded mind. The Alpha might have won the battle, but the war for the soul of Redwood Reach and for the human Luna at its center was far from over. The human wedding was a spectacle of elegant simplicity, orchestrated with a billionaire's resources but filled with a Pack's heart. It was held in a botanical garden conservatory, a glass palace bursting with orchids and roses, a deliberate echo of the wild beauty of the Reach. Rachel's few human friends gasped at the opulence. Frederick's business associates mingled, puzzled but polite, among the clearly distinct family guests, men and women like Johnson and Lillian, who moved with a disconcerting, unified grace and watched the proceedings with protective intensity. Rachel walked down the aisle on the arm of an elderly pack elder who had become a grandfatherly figure to her. She wore a gown of ivory silk, sleek and stunning, but beneath it, against her skin, was the moonstone pendant. Her eyes were only for Frederick. He stood at the altar in a classic black tuxedo, every inch the powerful CEO, but his gaze held the untamed love of the alpha. They exchanged traditional human vows, their voices clear in the hushed space. But as Frederick slid the platinum band next to her engagement ring, he leaned close and whispered words only she could hear, a secret promise beneath the public ones. By this ring, I tie you to my human heart. Soon, by my teeth, I will tie you to my wolf's soul. A shiver of pure anticipation raced through her. The reception was a masterclass in blending worlds. A renowned string quartet played Vivaldi. But later, as the night deepened, the music shifted to the deep, rhythmic drums and haunting flutes of pack traditions. Frederick's human guests watched in fascinated awe as the family performed intricate, powerful dances that told stories of the hunt and the moon. The climax came when Frederick, after a tender human first dance, led Rachel to the center of the dance floor. He nodded to Johnson. The drums changed. The beat became primal, pounding. Frederick began to move, not a ballroom step, but a fluid, powerful display of controlled strength, a dance of the alpha. It was a public declaration, in the heart of the human world, of what he truly was. Rachel, swept up in the moment, moved with him, her own movements becoming more confident, more instinctual. To the human guests, it was an exotic, passionate performance. To the pack, it was a ritual. Their alpha was courting their Luna before all eyes. As the last drumbeat faded, Frederick pulled Rachel into a dip, kissing her deeply under a rain of petals. The room erupted in applause. But the true celebration awaited at Redwood Reach. The pack had prepared a feast that made the city reception look meek. Whole deer roasted over pits, tables groaned with food, and the fire was a pillar of flame reaching for the moon, which was just past full, waiting for its next peak. Rachel changed into a soft, leather-beaded ceremonial dress made by Lillian. She was no longer a bride in white, but a Luna in waiting. The pack greeted her with reverent howls, their acceptance now complete and fervent. For days, a sacred stillness settled over the Reach. The marking ceremony was not a public event like the wedding, but a profound, private ritual between mates, witnessed only by the moon and the ancient trees. Rachel was prepared by Lillian and the elder females with oils and herbs, their songs old and soothing. They explained what would happen. The claiming bite would not be a savage wound, but a precise, deep bond that would forever link her life force to Frederick's, heightening her senses, extending her lifespan, and solidifying the mental bond they already shared. She would carry his mark, a scar, in the shape of his unique bite, for life. The night arrived. Clear and cold, the stars like splintered ice. Rachel was led to a sacred clearing, where a circle of stones stood under the towering redwoods. Frederick waited for her in the center, wearing only a loincloth, his body painted with archaic symbols in ash and clay. He was the picture of the primal alpha, breathtaking and terrifying. Lillian and the elders melted away into the trees, leaving them alone. Frederick held out his hand. Your choice, my heart. Until the last moment. It is your choice. She placed her hand in his. No choice, only fate. He led her to a bed of furs and moss in the very center of the stones. The ceremony was wordless, a language of touch, scent, and shared breath. It was a union of breathtaking intimacy, where every caress was a vow, every sigh a prayer. As they moved together under the moon, the boundary between man and wolf, between human and Luna, dissolved. Rachel felt the wild, beautiful truth of his soul as never before. At the peak of their joining, as ecstasy shattered through them both, Frederick's body trembled with the force of holding back the shift. He buried his face in the juncture of her neck and shoulder, his breath ragged. Now, she pleaded, arching against him. Make me yours forever. A low growl of pure possession rumbled from his chest. His human teeth elongated, sharpening into canines. With a love that was both tender and fiercely primal, he bit down. There was a flash of sharp pain, instantly swamped by a tidal wave of sensation so intense, it stole her breath. It wasn't just pleasure or pain, it was connection. The golden thread in her mind exploded into a blazing bridge. She could feel the forest through his senses, the scurrying of a mouse a mile away, the root sap rising in the trees, the cool kiss of the moon on his pelt. She felt his awe, his overwhelming love, his fierce, eternal protectiveness. And he felt her complete surrender, her absolute trust, her human soul expanding to hold the vastness of his wolf's heart. When he released, licking the wound gently to begin the healing, Rachel was transformed. She felt stronger, more alive. The world was sharper, clearer. She could hear the heartbeat of the fox in its den, smell the water in the distant stream. And in her mind, Frederick's presence was a steady, warm sun. He looked at her, his eyes blazing gold in the moonlight. On her neck, the mark already shimmered, a unique pattern that would fade to a silvery scar, his permanent claim. "My Luna," he breathed, the words a sacred truth. "My Alpha," she whispered back, the title now hers to give. They slept entwined in the clearing, cradled by the ancient earth. For the first time, Rachel's dreams were not her own. She ran on 4 paws through sun-dappled forests, the wind in her fur, Frederick by her side. She was Pack. She was home. But deep in the woods, a lone wolf, mangled and bitter, caught the potent, changed scent on the wind, the scent of a completed Luna marking. It was a smell of ultimate union and supreme power. Kelvin howled, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage and betrayal. The marking was done. The human was now truly, irrevocably, one of them. His plan, simmering in the darkness, solidified into cold, hard purpose. He had made a pact with shadows beyond the border. The Alpha's happiness would be his weapon. The Luna's new strength would be her vulnerability. The war for the Reach was no longer about challenge. It was about annihilation. Life in the Reach, postmarking, was a symphony of heightened sensation for Rachel. Colors were richer, sounds had layers, and the emotional tapestry of the pack was a constant, humming background chorus she was learning to interpret. The bond with Frederick was a living thing, a shared space in their minds, where feelings, intentions, and sometimes vivid sensations flowed freely. A headache for her was a twinge behind his eyes. His satisfaction after a successful pack hunt warmed her like a glass of brandy. She began to take on more Luna duties formally. She mediated a dispute between 2 younger wolves over hunting grounds, her human sense of fairness cutting through ingrained rivalry. She worked with Lillian to modernize the pack's medicinal stores, integrating human first aid with ancient herbal knowledge. The pack's respect deepened into genuine devotion. She was not just the Alpha's mate. She was their healer, their peacemaker, their heart. Frederick watched her flourish with a pride that swelled their bond. He split his time more evenly now, trusting Johnson to handle more city business, his focus firmly on securing their future in the Reach. The shadow of Kelvin had not vanished, but it had receded. Reports placed him wandering the far, uninhabited fringes of the territory, a lone, broken wolf. The greater threat seemed to be the Silvermane pack, whose scouts were becoming bolder, testing the borders with increasing frequency. One evening, as the first chill of autumn bit the air, Rachel was helping sort dried herbs in the healing lodge. A wave of dizziness washed over her, so strong she had to grip the table. Along with it came a strange fluttering nausea, and through the bond, a spike of sharp, protective alarm from Frederick, who was miles away on a border patrol. He was at her side within the hour, bursting into the lodge, his scent of storm and fear filling the space. "What happened? I felt you falter." Lillian, who had been watching Rachel with growing curiosity, slowly smiled. She took Rachel's hand and placed it on her own wrist, then on Rachel's abdomen. "You felt her falter, my son, because a new life makes its presence known, one that shares her blood and yours." The world stopped. Frederick's eyes widened, darting from his mother's knowing face to Rachel's stunned one. The bond between them flooded with a cascade of emotion shock, a terror more profound than any battle fear, and then a joy so brilliant it was blinding. "A pup?" Frederick breathed, the old-fashioned pack term slipping out. He dropped to his knees before Rachel, his large hands hovering over her stomach, as if it were sacred ground. We're Rachel placed her hands over his, tears of wonder filling her eyes. The strange sensations now made perfect, miraculous sense. "A baby," she whispered. The news, when shared with the pack at the next bonfire, ignited a celebration that dwarfed all others. The lineage was secured, a new generation, born of a fated pair, a child of both human resilience and alpha power. It was seen as a blessing from the moon goddess, a sign of the pack's prosperous future. For Frederick, it was the final, unimaginable gift. But joy in the wolf world is always flanked by vigilance. That night, as Rachel slept curled against him, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, Frederick lay awake. The bond hummed with her contentment and the faint, new, mysterious spark of the life within her. But his alpha senses, hyper-alert, stretched into the woods. The Silvermane incursions were not random, they were probing for weakness. And nothing made an alpha more vulnerable than a pregnant mate. He began to plan. Security around the central compound was tripled. He recalled wolves from distant outposts. He sent Johnson to the city to liquidate assets, preparing for a potential all-out conflict that could require funds for a prolonged siege. The Reach became a fortress buzzing with joyful anticipation and grim preparation. Rachel, through the bond, felt his anxiety. "You're worried about more than border skirmishes," she said one afternoon as they walked the inner perimeter. He couldn't lie to her through the bond. "Kelvin has disappeared from our territory entirely. My scouts found traces of him heading towards Silvermane lands. A traitor and an enemy pack make a dangerous combination. They will know about the pregnancy soon. It makes you, us, a target." She stopped, turning to face him. The gentle Luna was gone, replaced by a fierce, maternal protectiveness that shone in her hazel eyes. "Then we fight. I am not a fragile human anymore, Frederick. I am your Luna. I carry your air. My strength is your strength." She placed his hand back on her stomach. "Our strength." He saw it then, not just the human woman he loved, but the true Luna, a queen willing to defend her den. He pulled her into a crushing embrace, love and fear, a potent cocktail in his heart. "I will let nothing happen to you. To either of you." Weeks passed. Rachel's pregnancy progressed with supernatural swiftness and ease, a benefit of the marking, Lillian said. Her senses grew even sharper, and she began to pick up emotions from the pack more clearly, mostly love and excitement, but also, from the warriors, a undercurrent of tense anticipation. The confrontation came on a night of no moon, a dark moon, when wolf senses were slightly dampened and shadows held sway. The attack was not a frontal assault. It was cunning and cruel. While Frederick and the bulk of his warriors were drawn to a feint on the eastern border, a large, noisy group of Silvermane wolves, a second, smaller, elite group infiltrated from the west. Their target was not the armory or the food stores, it was the Alpha's cabin. Rachel, who had been reading by the fire, felt a wrongness through the bond, a spike of battle fury from Frederick, but it was distant. Then, her own heightened senses caught it, the stealthy crunch of a footfall on pine needles that wasn't pack, the scent of strange wolf, and something familiar, laced with hate. She moved instantly. She doused the lights and slipped out the back, melting into the trees as Frederick had taught her. She made for the sacred clearing, the most defensible spot she knew, her heart pounding not just for herself, but for the life inside her. She reached the stone circle just as three massive wolves, their coats silver-gray in the starlight, slunk into the open. Leading them, in human form, was Kelvin. His face was a mask of twisted triumph. "The Luna, alone," he sneered, "and ripe with the Alpha's spawn. Taking you will break him more completely than killing him ever could." Rachel stood her ground, the moonstone pendant cold against her skin. She felt no fear, only a cold, clear fury. She reached down the bond, not with a cry for help, but with a beacon of pure location and a single, sharp image of Kelvin's face. Then she spoke, her voice steady and carrying the authority of the Reach. "You are in a sacred circle, Kelvin. You are nothing but a ghost and a traitor. Your bite has no power here." Kelvin snarled and shifted. The three Silvermane wolves advanced, but Rachel was not defenseless. She knew this land. As the first wolf lunged, she sidestepped and brought a heavy, fallen branch down on its hind leg with a crack. The wolf yelped. The second came from her left, but she flung a handful of finely ground mountain ash, a deterrent for rogue wolves, from her pocket into its eyes, blinding it temporarily. It was a delaying action, but she was tiring. The third wolf, and Kelvin, circled for the kill. A howl tore through the night. Not from the border. This one was closer, filled with such rage and terror that the very trees shook. It was answered by a dozen others, converging fast. Frederick had felt her call. He had broken from the border fight, realizing the deception, and was flying toward her. His warriors, a vengeance-driven tide behind him. Kelvin, seeing his plan unravel, made a final, desperate lunge for Rachel. But as he leaped, a huge, black form erupted from the trees, moving with impossible speed. Frederick intercepted him in mid-air, a collision of fur, fury, and snapping jaws. The sound was horrific. The battle in the clearing was short and brutal. The outnumbered Silvermane wolves were subdued. But all eyes were on the two alphas. Frederick, in his wolf form, stood over a broken, bleeding Kelvin, now shifted back to human, his arm bent at a grotesque angle. Frederick's muzzle was stained dark. He shifted, standing naked and terrifying over his enemy. "You threatened my mate, my child. She's a human poison," Kelvin gurgled. Frederick's foot came down on Kelvin's wounded arm. A scream shattered the night. "You are banished. Your name is Ash. If you or any wolf you ever speak to crosses into Reach territory again, I will not stop at your arm. I will devour your heart." He gestured to his warriors. "Throw him over the border. Let the carrion birds have him." As Kelvin was dragged away, Frederick turned. His eyes found Rachel, still standing tall within the stone circle, her chest heaving, her hands protectively over her stomach. In 2 strides he was before her, gathering her into his arms, his body trembling with adrenaline and residual fury. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling her scent, iris, honey, and now, the new, fragile scent of their pup. "You fought," he whispered, awe in his voice. "I protected what's ours," she said, her voice muffled against his chest. The pack gathered, surrounding them in a protective, awed circle. Their Luna had faced down a traitor and enemy wolves alone. She was not just their heart, she was their strength. Frederick looked from his fierce, miraculous mate to the pack, his voice a raw command. "The threat is not over. Silvermane has declared war by this cowardly act, but they have also shown us our weakness and our strength." He held Rachel tighter. "We fight not just for territory, but for our future, for our Luna, for our heir." A unified, thunderous howl of agreement shook the forest. The dark moon held no power here. The light of their defiance was brighter. But as Frederick led his pregnant Luna back to their cabin, the cold truth settled in his bones. The skirmish was won, but the war with Silvermane had just truly begun, and his world had never been more precious, or more perilous. The attack on the sacred clearing changed everything. The Reach moved into a state of guarded, purposeful siege. Patrols ran in tighter, overlapping circuits. The perimeter was laced with human-made sensors cleverly disguised among the roots and rocks, a fusion of Rachel's suggestions and pack cunning. The joyful anticipation of the pup's arrival was now underscored by the grim clang of forging weapons and the scent of worried wolves. Rachel's pregnancy became the pack's focal point, a symbol of what they defended. Her body bloomed, and with it, her connection to the pack and the land deepened strangely. She began to have dreams, vivid, prophetic feeling glimpses. She saw a wolf with a pelt of stormy gray and eyes of hazel gold. She saw a field of irises blooming under a double moon. She felt the land's pain where Silvermane wolves had trespassed. Lillian called it the Luna's sight, a rare gift that sometimes awoke in marked mates, especially when carrying an alpha's heir. "The land speaks to you because you are its guardian now, as much as Frederick is its king," she explained, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. "You feel its wounds. Trust these feelings." Frederick, meanwhile, was a storm contained. The bond thrummed with his relentless vigilance and a simmering rage toward Silvermane. He spent hours with his war council, planning not just defense, but a decisive strike. He could not live with this sword hanging over his mate and child. Johnson returned from the city with not just funds, but discreet, loyal human contractors who could build reinforced structures and install secure communications, a modern fortress within the ancient woods. The turning point came on a night when Rachel's dream was particularly violent. She woke, gasping, her hands clutching her rounded belly, the phantom scent of blood and burning fur in her nostrils. "The old mill," she panted as Frederick held her. "On the northern border. The stone one by the river. They're there. Not just scouts. A war party." They planned to poison the river upstream at dawn. Frederick didn't question it. He trusted her sight as he trusted his own. He mobilized his warriors immediately. Under cover of darkness, they surrounded the derelict mill. Rachel's vision was precise. A group of 20 Silvermane warriors, led by their beta, were indeed camped inside, storing vessels of a toxic wolfsbane extract. The ensuing fight was a testament to Frederick's leadership and the advantage of surprise. The Silvermane beta was captured, his warriors routed. The threat to the water supply was eliminated, but during the interrogation, a more horrifying plan was revealed. Your human Luna is the key, the bruised and beaten Silvermane beta spat, defiant even in defeat. Our alpha doesn't just want your land. He wants to break the myth of the fated mates. He wants to take her, to prove your bond is weak, that a human can be claimed by a stronger wolf, to raise your pup as his own. Your heir will call him father. The rage that exploded from Frederick was a physical force. It took Johnson and 2 other senior wolves to hold him back from tearing the prisoner apart. The bond flooded with such black, murderous fury that Rachel, back at the compound, doubled over, feeling the echo of his pain. When Frederick returned, his eyes were chips of glacial gold. He went straight to the armory, then to the central fire pit, and summoned the entire pack. No more defense. His voice was the crashing of mountains. Silvermane has declared not just war, but a war against our future, against our bond, against our very souls. We answer now. We take the fight to them. We rip the heart out of their alpha's ambition and feed it to him. The pack's answering howl was a sound of bloodlust and liberation. They were tired of waiting. But Rachel stepped forward, placing herself between Frederick and the path to war. Her belly was large, her face drawn. But her gaze was unbreakable. And I am to wait here? Worrying? Feeling every injury you take through the bond? What if it triggers the birth? What if they circle back and attack here with your forces gone? Fredersen stared at her, the conflict between his protective instincts and his warrior's heart tearing him apart. I cannot take you into battle. You are too vulnerable. I am the Luna, she fired back, her own power rising. The pack watched, riveted. My place is with my alpha, especially in this. You fight for me, for our child. Let me be your strength on the field, not a worry in your mind. I don't need to fight with claws. I can be your compass. She touched her temple. My sight. What if it can guide you? What if the land warns me of ambushes, shows me their weaknesses? It was a gamble, an insane one. But Lillian nodded slowly. The old tales speak of Lunas who guided battles from the sidelines, their bond a map for their alphas. The idea was radical, but Frederick, who had learned to trust the miracles Rachel brought, saw the tactical advantage. Her bond with him was a perfect, secure communication line. Her Luna's sight could be their greatest weapon. The plan was formed. They would march at dawn. Rachel would be at the center of their column. Heavily guarded, connected to Frederick at the front, she would be their living radar. The night before the march, Frederick laid his hands on her stomach, where their child kicked restlessly, as if sensing the coming storm. I am afraid, he admitted, the raw confession flowing down the bond. So am I, she whispered, covering his hands with hers. But we are afraid together. That makes us brave. At dawn, the pack of Redwood Reach moved like a silent, deadly river through the forest, toward Silvermane territory. Rachel, riding an especially modified ATV for speed and stability, focused inward. She let her consciousness drift, tethered to Frederick by the golden bond, and through him, to the land. She felt the anxiety of the deer, the agitation of the birds. She felt a wrongness ahead, a patch of forest that felt sick with hostile intent. Frederick, she pushed the thought down the bond, along with a mental image of a specific ravine. Ambush, left ridge, 20 wolves. Frederick, without breaking stride, signaled his warriors. When the Silvermane ambush sprang, they were ready, counter-ambushing from higher ground. The fight was short, brutal, and victorious. Again and again. Rachel guided them. Stream is poisoned ahead, divert east. Their main force is clustered in the cedar grove. But their alpha is separate. In the stone den to the north, she was their secret weapon. The Silvermane wolves, expecting a head-on assault, were confounded by the Reach Pack's prescient movements. They were being outmaneuvered by a ghost. Finally, they reached the heart of Silvermane territory, a stark, rocky valley. In the center, before a cave, stood Cassius, the Silvermane alpha, a grizzled wolf with a pelt the color of tarnished silver. His pack, battered and confused, gathered behind him. Frederick stepped forward, shifting to human form. Cassius, your war ends here. You bring your pregnant human to a battlefield, Vance? Cassius mocked, though his eyes darted nervously. Is she a shield? She is our advantage, Frederick thundered. She is the reason you lose. You fight for conquest. We fight for love. And it is stronger. The two alphas clashed in the center of the valley, a fight of epic, brutal proportion. It was not just strength against strength, but ideology against ideology. Frederick fought with the focused fury of a protector, every move fueled by the love he felt through the bond with Rachel, who sent him waves of strength, warnings of feints, and her unwavering faith. Cassius fought with the desperate rage of a king seeing his kingdom slip away, but he was distracted, unmoored. The myth he sought to break was proving unbreakable. Frederick gained the upper hand, pinning Cassius, his teeth at the older alpha's throat. The law was clear. He could kill him and claim his pack. But through the bond, Rachel sent not a thought, but a feeling of mercy, of a future without this endless cycle of vengeance, of their child being born into peace, not carved from slaughter. Frederson hesitated. He looked over at Rachel, surrounded by his loyal wolves, her hands on her belly, her eyes full of not bloodlust, but hope. He leaned close to Cassius's ear. I spare your life. But Silvermane is dissolved. Your warriors join the Reach. Or go lone. This land is now under my protection. Your ambition ends now. It was a move of supreme power, not just to defeat, but to absorb, to heal. As Cassius yielded, a great tension bled from the land. Rachel felt it instantly. A soothing wave that washed away the psychic sickness of war. But the relief triggered something else in her body. A deep, tightening cramp seized her abdomen. So intense she cried out. The bond transmitted her pain instantly to Frederick. His victory forgotten, he sprinted to her side. The cramps were coming in waves. Her water had broken. Their child had chosen the moment of his father's greatest victory to begin his journey into the world. There, in the conquered valley of their enemies, surrounded by a united pack of former foes and loyal friends, under a sky just beginning to blush with dawn, Rachel went into labor. The war was over, but the greatest, most terrifying, most beautiful challenge of their lives was just beginning. Chaos reigned, but it was an ordered chaos dictated by a single, imperative purpose. Frederick's commands snapped through the air, transforming warriors into midwives and sentries. The Silvermane cave was cleared and swiftly transformed furs were laid. A fire was lit. Water was boiled from a clean, verified spring. Lillian took charge, shooing Frederick out more than once, only for him to circle back like a restless ghost, drawn by Rachel's pain echoing through their bond. Rachel's labor was intense and swift, a trait of marked human mates, Lillian assured, but it was no less daunting. Each contraction was a mountain of pressure, and through the bond, Frederick felt the echoes of it, a shared trial that turned his knuckles white as he gripped her hand. I'm here, he kept murmuring, wiping her brow with a damp cloth, his alpha's voice reduced to a tender, unwavering chant. I'm here, my heart. You are so strong. Our pup is eager to meet us. Outside, the newly unified pack stood vigil. The former Silvermane wolves, their fate uncertain, watched in solemn awe. The myth was being born before them. The fated mates, having won a war, were now bringing new life into a reborn territory. As the sun reached its zenith, Rachel's strength seemed to falter. The pain was cresting, and exhaustion clouded her eyes. I can't, she panted. Tears mingling with sweat, Frederson felt a spike of primal fear. He leaned close, his forehead against hers, their bond wide open. He didn't send words, but sensations. The cool, strong rush of the Reach's rivers, the steadfast solidity of the ancient redwoods, the fierce, boundless warmth of his love for her. He showed her a mental image of their child, the wolf from her dreams, with storm-gray fur and wise hazel eyes, running free. You are my Luna, he whispered, his voice raw. You are the strongest creature I know. Bring our heir into the world. Let me hear our child's voice. His faith was a lifeline. With a final, ground-shaking cry that tore from the depths of her soul, Rachel pushed. And then, there was a new sound in the world. A sharp, indignant, healthy wail. Lillian held up a squirming, perfect baby boy. "A son," she proclaimed, her own voice thick with emotion. Fredersen cut the cord with a ceremonial silver knife, his hands trembling. When the baby was cleaned and wrapped in soft furs, Lillian placed him in Rachel's arms. Rachel looked down, her exhaustion replaced by a wonder so profound it glowed. He had a shock of dark hair, and when he opened his eyes, blinking in the firelight, they were a startling, clear hazel her eyes, but with a ring of molten gold around the pupil. Frederick's wolf gaze. "Hello, my love," Rachel breathed, tears of joy streaming freely. Fredersen could only stare, overwhelmed. The bond was now a triad. He could feel the bright, new, fierce spark of his son's life, nestled between his own soul and Rachel's. It was a love so vast it was terrifying. "Lucas," Rachel said softly, looking up at Frederick. "After my father. And for the light." Fredersen nodded, unable to speak. He touched his son's tiny fist, and the baby's fingers curled around his thumb with a surprising strength. In that touch, Frederick felt the future, the legacy, the hope, the unbroken line. They rested in the cave for a day, allowing Rachel to recover. The pack, under Johnson's firm direction, managed the integration of the willing Silvermane wolves and began the journey home. Frederick carried Lucas in a sling against his chest, the baby sleeping peacefully to the rhythm of his father's heartbeat. Rachel rode beside him, leaning into his strength. Their return to Redwood Reach was a triumph of an entirely new kind. They were greeted not as warriors, but as a family. The pack's howls were songs of welcome and celebration for their new prince. Life settled into a new, precious rhythm. Lucas grew with the uncanny speed of an alpha's heir. At 3 months, he was crawling with determined purpose. At 6 months, he was taking wobbly steps, and his nature was a perfect blend of his parents. He had Rachel's thoughtful curiosity, and Frederick's quiet, observant intensity. He was deeply connected to them both through the bond, his childish emotions a bright, clear stream alongside theirs. The question of his first shift loomed. It could happen any time after his first year, often triggered by strong emotion or a full moon. Frederick prepared him as best he could, telling him stories of the wolf within, a friend, a part of him. It happened on a crisp autumn afternoon. Lucas, now a robust toddler, was playing near the edge of the clearing when a large hawk dove for a rabbit nearby. The sudden, violent movement startled him. A yelp of fear burst from him, and before their eyes, a shimmer surrounded his small form. There was a soft pop, not of breaking bones, but of gentle rearrangement. Where Lucas had stood, now sat a wobbly, fluffy wolf pup. His fur was a soft, cloudy gray, just as in Rachel's dreams. His eyes were the same hazel gold. He let out a confused, tiny howl, more of a squeak. Rachel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Frederick knelt, his heart swelling with an indescribable pride. "There he is," he said softly. "There's my boy." The pup toddled over, nuzzling Frederick's hand, then bounding into Rachel's lap, licking her face. She laughed, holding her squirming, furry son. The bond now carried the unique, dual sensation of his human and wolf hearts. That night, under a fat harvest moon, Frederick stood before the pack with Rachel at his side, holding a now human again, sleepy Lucas. "My son has found his wolf," he announced. "The future of the Reach is strong. Our line is secure. Our unity is our power." The pack's howls were a symphony of joy that echoed for miles. The war was a memory. The heir was here. The fated bond had produced its miracle. But in the deepest, most secret part of the forest, where not even pack patrols went, a single, scarred figure heard the celebratory howls. Kelvin, surviving as a lone, feral wolf, his body broken but his hatred kept alive by magic darker than pack lore, lifted his own mangled muzzle. He did not howl in celebration. He uttered a choked, rasping sound of pure, undying envy. The heir lived. The union thrived. His failure was complete. As he limped into the absolute darkness, a new, more insidious plan, a plan not of confrontation, but of slow, patient corruption, began to take root in his twisted mind. The alpha's happiness was complete, which meant he had everything to lose. And a lone wolf with nothing left could be a patient, venomous shadow. The story of Redwood Reach was not over. It had simply entered a new, golden chapter. And the most dangerous threats often come not from rival packs, but from the forgotten shadows of one's own. Years woven from peace and purpose settled over Redwood Reach like a blessing. Lucas grew from a precocious pup into a spirited, kind-hearted boy of 7, equally at home scrambling up a tree in human form or streaking through the ferns on 4 swift paws. A sister, Elara, with her mother's chestnut hair and her father's piercing golden stare, arrived 2 years later, completing the family with a burst of mischievous laughter. The pack prospered. The integrated former Silvermane wolves had become some of the Reach's most ardent defenders. Frederick's business empire, now seamlessly managed by a council that included Johnson-funded schools, a state-of-the-art clinic, and sustainable initiatives that protected their vast territory. They were a model of how the old world and the new could not just coexist, but flourish. Rachel was the soul of it all. The human waitress was now a legendary Luna. She presided over ceremonies with a gentle authority, her Luna's sight now a finely tuned instrument she used to sense unrest or illness within the pack long before it surfaced. Her bond with Frederick was a deep, quiet ocean of mutual understanding and passionate love that had only matured with time. One evening, they stood at the edge of the sacred clearing, watching Lucas patiently teach a wobbly Elara how to shift her fingers into tiny claws, her little face screwed up in concentration. "We built this," Frederick said softly, his arm around Rachel's shoulders. "Out of chaos and choice, we built this piece." Rachel leaned into him, the moonstone pendant, now joined by a simple wedding band, warm between them. "It's more than I ever dreamed." But the deepest roots often harbor the slowest poisons. Kelvin had not vanished, he had festered. Surviving on stolen scraps and dark magic gleaned from forgotten corners of the lore, he had become less of a wolf and more of a phantom, a whisper of resentment in the deep woods. His target was not Frederick, who was too strong, nor Rachel, who was too protected. His target was the foundation of their happiness, their legacy. He watched for years, learning the patterns of the pack, the routines of the Alpha's children. He saw Lucas's compassionate nature, his tendency to wander just a little too far to help a trapped bird or follow a fascinating bug. He saw the deep, trusting bond the boy had with the land, a bond inherited from his mother. Using twisted, painstakingly gathered herbs and incantations that smelled of rot and tomb dust, Kelvin began to poison a single, ancient spruce at the far northern edge of the children's usual play area, a tree whose roots were intertwined with the ley lines of the territory. The poison was not meant to kill the tree, but to make it weep a subtle, psychic malaise, a feeling of deep wrongness and whispered doubt. Lucas, with his sensitive inherited connection to the land, found the tree first. He felt its sadness like a thorn in his own heart. "It's sick, Papa," he told Frederick one day, his small brow furrowed. Frederson had the healers check it. They found nothing physically amiss. The imagination of a young boy. One elder dismissed gently. But Lucas kept returning, compelled by a desire to help. Each time, the tree's psychic poison seeped deeper into his young, impressionable bond sense. He began to have nightmares, not of monsters, but of being alone, of his father's strength failing, of his mother's light going out. He became quieter, withdrawn. Rachel felt it first through the maternal part of their bond, a cold spot in Lucas's usually bright spirit. Then Frederick noticed the boy flinching during sparring lessons, a shadow of uncertainty in his eyes where there had always been fearless curiosity. "Something is affecting him," Rachel said, worry etching lines on her face. "And it feels malicious, but faint, like a odor carried from miles away." Frederick's protective instincts, never fully asleep, roared to life. He increased the guards on the children, had the entire northern sector patrolled. They found nothing. It was Elara, with her sharp, uncanny toddler's perception, who provided the clue. She pointed a chubby finger at Lucas during a family meal and said, "Luca smells like the sad tree." The simple words were a lightning strike. Rachel's Luna's sight, focusing on Lucas and following the thread of wrongness, shot toward the ancient spruce. In her mind's eye, she didn't just see a sick tree. She saw a phantom of decay clinging to it, and a familiar, hate-filled pair of eyes watching from the beyond. "Kelvin," she breathed, her own blood running cold. "He's not gone. He's using the land, poisoning it to get to our son." Frederson's rage was a silent, deadly thing. This was not a challenge he could meet with tooth and claw. This was a spiritual attack on his heir's mind. "How do we fight a ghost?" he growled, feeling helpless for the first time in years. We don't fight the ghost, Rachel said, her voice gaining the steel of the Luna who had guided a battle. We heal the land. And we show our son the true strength of our bond. The strength Kelvin could never understand and can never break. They brought Lucas to the sacred clearing, the heart of the Reach. Under the full moon, with the entire pack gathered in a silent, supportive circle, Frederick and Rachel stood with their children. Frederick placed his hands on Lucas's shoulders. The tree is sick because a heart full of hate touched it. Hate is a weakness, son. It makes you small, like a shadow. It cannot create. It can only spoil. He looked at Rachel. Love flowing openly down their bond. A golden river for all to feel. Our strength is love. It is a choice. Every day. It is what built this pack. What protects it. Rachel knelt before Alara and Lucas. She took their small hands and placed them over her own heart, then over Frederick's. Feel it, she whispered. This is the bond. It is love made real. It is stronger than any hate. It is what connects us to each other, and to every wolf here, and to every tree and stream in the Reach. She then turned her Luna's sight inward, not to find poison, but to project. She poured all her love for her family, her pack, her home. Down the bond and out into the clearing, into the very earth. She showed them the memory of Frederick fighting for her, of the pack celebrating Lucas's birth, of Alara's first laugh, of 1,000 daily kindnesses. The pack, feeling the outpouring through their own bonds to the alpha pair, joined instinctively. They didn't howl. They hummed, a low, resonant sound of shared memory, loyalty, and love. The clearing glowed with a palpable, gentle power. Lucas's eyes, which had been clouded with doubt, cleared. He felt the overwhelming, tangible force of the love surrounding him, dwarfing the tiny, cold whisper from the poisoned tree. He straightened his small shoulders. The shadow in his spirit shattered and evaporated. In the deep woods, Kelvin, who had been linked to his poisonous working, felt it crumble. The backlash of pure, concentrated love was like acid on his already corroded soul. He screamed, a soundless, ragged thing, as his last connection to the Reach, his last scheme, was incinerated by the very thing he despised. He was truly nothing now. Not even a shadow, just a bitter memory fading into the void. The next day, Frederick and Rachel took Lucas and Alara to the ancient spruce. Frederick placed his alpha's hands on the blighted bark. Rachel placed her Luna's hands over his. Lucas and Alara added their small ones. By our bond, by our love, we heal you, Rachel murmured. They pushed their combined will, alpha strength, Luna connection, and the pure, unspoiled love of the heirs into the tree. The tree shuddered. A black, tar-like substance seeped from its roots and evaporated. Within minutes, new, bright green shoots sprouted from its once drooping branches. The land itself sighed in relief. That night, the bonfire was a celebration of a different victory. Lucas, once again bright-eyed and brave, stood with his sister before the pack. The hate is gone, he announced in his clear child's voice. Love fixed it. The pack cheered. Frederick pulled Rachel close, looking around at his thriving pack, his radiant mate, his resilient children, and the peaceful, mighty woods. The journey had been from a lonely penthouse to a crowded, loving den, from a chance scent of iris to an unbreakable bond woven through battle, birth, and the quiet, fierce magic of everyday choice. He kissed his Luna's hair, his voice a whisper of contentment against her ear. We didn't just find love, my heart. We built a world with it, and it will endure, long after we are legend. And under the watchful, gentle moon, the Reach slept. Not in soft complacency, but in the hard-won, golden peace of a love that had faced every shadow and found its light unquenchable. The story of the Alpha and his human Luna was complete. Its final chapter, not an ending, but a lasting, resonant note of happiness that would echo through the generations of wolves to come.